From the darkest corners of the creepy old house down the street to the screams in the night. Settle in, Parafamily, to join with Whitney and Brandon for another spooky episode of the Para-Unity Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Para-Unity Podcast. As always, I'm Brandon.
And I'm Whitney, and that was my son.
Hi, Preston.
We have been video bombed. Good night,
right.
Preston. Go away. I love you. Yes. Yes. Speaking of which, he decided one of his horror movies that he wants to watch this Halloween is Insidious.
Really?
Really?
Wow. Kids getting crazy.
Yep. Anyway, what are we doing tonight, Brandon?
No kidding. Well, tonight, Whitney, we are headed to the southeast corner of Oklahoma to have a chat about UFOs, Sasquatch, and other creepy things with paranormal author John Vandeventer.
Oh, this is exciting. And we have to give a shout out to Betsy Kulikowski, friend of the show, and Veritas Codex extraordinaire. She is the one that has recommended that we bring John on the show. So here we are.
And now John has his shoes to fill because last week's episode
wasn't
crazy.
That amazing? Oh my God, Lapaka, wherever you are tonight, mahalo. We love you, and we can't wait to have you back, bro. That was amazing.
Well, tonight's going to be just as good.
Absolutely.
And we don't have to travel quite as far.
Where are we going tonight? Oklahoma?
Well, tonight, like I said, we're in Oklahoma. So John was born in Dallas and then raised in Plano, Texas. And he still has a lifelong fascination for military aircraft, which he developed as a young boy. So now this fascination led to him serving in the United States Air Force for 16 years.
Yes. Thank you for your service.
Yes. So his fascination for military aircraft also led to another lifelong fascination with UFOs. And we'll be talking with him about it too, because he has a really good story about it. So he's the father of 5 children, which is scary all in amongst itself.
You have 4, right?
No, I have 5 too.
Oh yeah. Good point. Oh yeah.
So I feel him. I feel him personally.
I know. Bless you guys.
Relics, a myth you don't believe, a reality you won't survive, was his first attempt at a writing and was published through Page Publishing in September of 2017.
Wow.
So the second edition of the same books, Relics, A Dark Autumn, was published by Empire Publishing in October of 2021.
Oh, this is so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And John, since he's all about writing about Bigfoot and Sasquatch, John has been a guest on podcasts such as Sasquatch Chronicles and Nightcaller's Bigfoot Radio. He was a guest speaker along with Ron Moorhead, Scott Nelson, and MK Davis at the 2019 Honobia Bigfoot Festival. And I believe Betsy has mentioned this festival to us before.
Yes,
she has. He also served as MC during the 2021 festival, introducing such guests as Lyle Blackburn, Professor Marvin Leeper, and Shelley Montana.
That's some like big names when you're getting into like the Bigfoot stuff.
We are. I mean, I'll admit cryptids are still kind of like an area of the paranormal or preternatural, whatever you want to call it, that I still don't know a whole lot about. It's not my wheelhouse, but I still remember creating this Yeti mold of a foot for like a 5th grade project. And I used my dad's foot as a base for it. And then I added the hooked big toe and the gap in between and all that stuff. So yeah.
Sure.
I did.
Well, before we bring John on, let's talk a little about the area that we're going to be traveling to tonight. So Onobia is an unincorporated community on the border between the western Lafleur County and eastern Pushmataha County in Oklahoma. I hate big words.
Words.
It's 15 miles southeast of Talihina, which is the community itself is named for Onobia, which is a Choctaw Indian land alati.
Oh.
Yeah. So the name of the community is pronounced locally as Honubby. just let it go. Just let it go. Roll with it.
Yes. And speaking of the Choctaw, following the Choctaw Indians' relocation to the area over the Trail of Tears and the establishment of the Choctaw Nation there, Honobia became home to a Choctaw settlement. Until statehood, the area was part of Wade County in the, oh Lord, yeah, now it's my turn. Apukshnubi. I'm going to go with that. Apukshnubi.
You're so eloquent.
Thank you. I mean, I'm probably wrong, but I'm going to go with that. And for anybody that wants to correct me, please do. Thank you. But that was the name of the district of the Choctaw Nation in Wade County area. Although the national capital was basically, and its stately Choctaw Capitol building was located 32 miles away at Tuskahoma. Honobia was and remains isolated from the rest. And that's kind of interesting.
Well, that's why it's perfect for Bigfoot.
Yeah, a Bigfoot doesn't want to be around us.
No.
I don't blame them. Anyway, most of the areas to the north and south of Honobia are vast tree plantations owned by timber companies. As such, these areas remain wildernesses covering many square miles. Logging provides an important source of jobs for these residents. Additionally, locals promote, here we go, an annual Bigfoot festival and conference dedicated to the cryptid. I'm going to call it a cryptid because that's what it is. And it was popularized locally by an alleged 2000 sighting known as the Siege of Onobia. This is one of the only mainstay boosts for the economy of this area. That is so cool.
It brings a ton of people in too.
I would love to. I forgot how many people actually go there. I'm sure Betsy has told us. I can't wait to hear from John and have him tell us.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But being this deep into a spiritual land of Sasquatches and Choctaw Indians, there are a fair few haunted places around the area. So the first place that I want to talk about is a Kiamichi Kitchen, which is located in Talihina. Okay. So now this kitchen is actually demolished now, but it was housed in a former private home. And it's said that it's to be haunted by a ghost called George, who would turn on lights and then turn on the radios on and off and make tons of noises late at night.
So question, because it did say, we did say that there were plantations out here. Is this like a 19th century kitchen building that was separate from the house or something?
Well, from what I understand, it was actually in the house and it was just kind of a special area. I don't know a whole lot about it because since they demolished it, not a lot of people are talking about it anymore. There are still people that go there to the area where it was, and they still get reports of all sorts of stuff. So,
wow, I like that. Okay, well, how about instead of a kitchen, how about I take you to an actual bar and grill? Our next spot is Mary Jane's 1896 Bar and Grill, also known as the 1896. I like that. And the place was in fact built in 1896. Legend had, yeah, well, 1896 is a good year from what I've heard. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, legend has it that there were several deaths on the property, including murders and suicides in the apartment located above the bar and grill. And the resultant ghosts like to play pranks. And one ghost likes dimes. And it is said that those who set a dime somewhere on the premises will find it the next day on the bar. That's interesting.
That means the ghost likes to drink.
Yeah, but I'm wondering. Oh God, I hope they have a really good tip jar. with these. I hope they set aside a good tip jar for those dimes.
Lots of dimes.
That would have been awesome. But
However,
anyway,
did they take them back out of the jar and put them back on the bar?
that's a good question. That is a good question. Now, I have also, this is the first time I've heard of a ghost fixated on coins. I've heard of another ghost once that was fixated on pennies, and it was a certain kind of penny that was minted at a certain time. So that's how the person, when they would find these pennies, that's how they knew it was this particular individual haunting. Pretty interesting. But anyway, back to the 1896. The ghosts also have been known to throw bottle caps, pans, and bricks and lock people in the restrooms. Okay, that's a little bit of an extreme variance of activity there, from just operating
to bricks.
I was also going to say from dimes to throwing stuff and then locking. What is it about ghosts in restrooms? I swear. Anyway.
I think it's funny that they lock the people in the bathroom.
I mean, maybe they really want you to go.
I don't know. Anyways, let's get back on this track here. Our final place is the Wheelock Mission. So according to local stories, the hauntings at the Wheelock Mission began when a man broke into the girls' mission and murdered the girls. So witnesses say that the walls and the trees bleed, and that apparitions sit in chairs or hang from trees.
Whoa.
So one story tells of some teens who tried to steal a vase from the mission cemetery. When they got to the car with their plunder, the car wouldn't start. So the kids were like, maybe we shouldn't do this, and got second thoughts and returned the vase to the cemetery, and the car started right up.
I am getting some major, because last time we were talking with, when we talked with Lopaka about taking things from the island of Hawaii and how bad fortune would follow.
Well,
folks.
Lava rocks are a lot different than a vase from a cemetery.
But still a similar thing. I mean, you're stealing something that's a token and meant as a gesture of affection and respect to the dead, and you're taking it. So, I mean, I'm getting some wow. Okay, before we go too far deep in the weeds here, I think we should bring on our guest and let him wander into the weeds with us. So
sounds good. Hopefully he's got his big boots on.
I'm sure he does.
Ladies and gentlemen, and all of our beautiful friends that are commenting on the chats, thank you and welcome. Let's bring on our guest tonight, paranormal author John Vandeventer.
Hey,
John,
yay!
Good to
How
see
are
you.
you doing tonight, my friend?
Doing great. How are you?
And we've got lots of love tonight on the chat. We've got Betsy Kulikowski, of course, on the chat. Love, love, love. And Tina Fleury, our wonderful friend from last year in the Paranormal Women's panel. We have another author, Ginny Simmerd LeBranch, and Gail Williams is in the house. We have all these amazing ladies online tonight.
You brought in all the competition.
I thought we're all...
It's para-unity, guys.
I love Betsy, and I know Jenny as well on Facebook. Both very awesome ladies, and I'm glad they're here to watch me, and glad you're here to take part in this.
Yay!
Hi, you two.
Awesome.
Hi, thanks for joining us, John.
Well, John, let's kick this off. You write books about Bigfoot and aliens. How on earth did you go, maybe I should write about that?
Well, it's a long story. Funny thing, I was at a book signing Saturday with another author, and when he read the second book, he's like, there's no way he's going to tie these UFOs and Sasquatch together. He goes, man, he did it. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. But you know, I never saw myself as being an author one day or wanted to write books. And I wasn't particularly interested in the Bigfoot subject. I thought it was cool. I was always into UFOs and things like that. And I was, as you said on the intro, I was always interested in aircraft, military aircraft. After getting out of the Air Force, I became a copier tech. And then one day I found this flight simulator, online flight simulator, and I got into it really heavy. And on Friday nights, we would create battles from World War II, recreate them. And, you might have 500 people and they'd have 250 on one side, 250 on the other. Flight models were accurate. So it was really historical, and I'm into history, especially aviation history. So I love participating in this thing. So one night, we actually had squadrons. I mean, we went way overboard on this, but male hobby, you know how it goes. So one night we were doing Operation Torch, and me and three of my buddies, we were detached from the main squad. We were supposed to just patrol this area on the North African coast and just see if we spotted anything coming in and give a warning to the bigger groups that could come in and do the damage. So we're flying down the coastline, and a buddy of mine, I've been playing that game for decades with this guy. He starts talking about a Bigfoot encounter he had as a child. And the other two guys are real interested, and I'm listening, and I look over and I see 10 dots just coming out of nowhere, and they're coming from where the bad guys' bases were. So I called them out, and I turned left and flew into 10 German Fokker wolves, and they made mincemeat out of me. And anytime you fly this simulator, as soon as you die, you can get back in,
Right.
except Friday nights when we're doing a historical recreation. Once you're out, you're out. And it was early. It's probably still 2.5 hours left. And here I am in my little cyber parachute floating down into the Mediterranean. And I'm giving my friend all kinds of grief. Hey, man, you're an idiot. Bigfoot's an idiot. Why didn't you come help me? Bigfoot, blah, blah. I just let him have it. Hit the water, logged off, mad. Next morning, I woke up and regained my composure and took the pacifier out of my mouth, manned up, called him and apologized. And so I told him, I said, well, I want to hear your story. And it was a pretty remarkable story because it was in Florida. And I was confused when he told me Florida. I said, Florida? And he's like, yeah. Well, see, at this time, I hadn't done any research on Bigfoot. And I assumed, like a lot of people, it's a Pacific Northwest thing. I didn't realize it happened all over the country. And I tell you how in the dark I was about it as a kid. I saw the legend of Boggy Creek. And from that point till I was researching Bigfoot, I had no idea that's what that was. I just thought it was some monster people were seeing. I'd never made the connection to Sasquatch. But anyway, a couple of weeks later, I'd seen a link for Willow Creek, the movie Willow Creek. And I sent it to him. And he says, oh, that's really cool. We should make a movie. I'm like, we? What are you talking about? He goes, you know what I do, right? And I said, no. I just know you got me shot down. No, I really didn't know what he did for a living.
You're not bitter.
No. That was 6 years ago. I don't remember a thing. But anyway, we got to talking. He goes, well, man, I got a production company. I make infomercials. And he sent me a list of them. And he goes, can you write me a short story? And that's something I can make into a short film. And I was like, well, maybe. I didn't want to do it, but I agreed to do it. And so I got started on it. And he was feeding me the information I needed. It was going to be in Ohio, where the grass man is, another thing I didn't know anything about. And so all of a sudden something came up. He got a big contract in California that he had to go there and take care of. And he was getting a lot of money for it. So this Bigfoot stuff, wasn't important to him anymore. Wasn't important to me anymore. So I set everything aside and I printed out some of the writing I'd done. Well, my sister, she's 9 years older than me. She's kind of mother figure. I never knew my real mother. So she was always, kind of like my mother figure. And she had come to visit and she was reading that stuff. She goes, you need to make this into a novel. I'm like, oh, no. I'm done. And she kept on me. And I thought, okay, why not? So that's how it all began. Now, since my friend was going to feed me the location and this and that, I had to come up with a location. And so I started researching where Sasquatch sightings were in Texas because I lived in Texas at the time, and most of them were way down around Houston, and I didn't want to go down there. And I ran across that story, Siege of Honobi, on Sasquatch Chronicles. And so I researched, found out where Honobi was, and it is Honobi. And it took me, I still don't say it quite right, and I've been here 4 years. But anyway, so I started looking at the map, research. But for my story, I needed I needed a police department. I needed a hospital. I needed more infrastructure than Honubby has. We don't have nothing here. We got one little store. I think it's 19 miles to the nearest post office, 17 miles nearest gas station. Walmart's like 43 miles away. I mean, we're pretty isolated. So I looked at the map, found Talahena, and it's just north. It's 24 miles north by road. In a straight line, it may be 14, but you got to take mountain roads to get there. So I decided, I decided on this, and I began researching and writing a story. And luckily, my job was I was a copier, fax, printer tech, and I might have 60, 70 miles between calls. So I could listen to a lot of podcasts in my travels during the day and get a lot of information. If something came up, I'd jot things down. But I really started getting fascinated in the subject. Excuse me, let me take a sip here. And I couldn't believe just how many people had seen this thing. And I was even more shocked by where they were seeing it. It wasn't all in the Pacific Northwest. And so things started coming together. A story started coming together. Now, my kids can tell you I was always a good storyteller because we did a lot of long drives while I was in the Air Force. And, you'd have kids in the back of the van fighting. So I'd start telling the story to calm them down. And it's funny because there's a place, I was stationed in Tucson, and we would come out to East Texas to see my family, or we went from Tucson to Georgia when I got reassigned. But there's a place called Van Horn, about 100 miles from El Paso in Texas. There's these hills, they're little mountains right on the highway. And one night the kids were just going nuts. I was hoping they'd fall asleep, but they were wound up. And so I started saying, "Hey, what's for the Wahoo Man?" And they're like, "What's the Wahoo Man?" There was a full moon that night, and you could see the mountains perfect. As this big hairy guy runs up and down those ridges, and he screams down at the cars on the highway. Keep an eye out for him. So, they're all glued, got their noses pressed in. And I quieted them down. And what I didn't realize then, it took me a little while to realize, I just told my first Bigfoot story. So
there you go.
we got through the trip. And anyway, as I started writing a book, I just became more and more fascinated with the subject. I was reading Ron Moorhead's book, David Paulides. Oh, and also about the time I was researching, David Paulides' Missing 411 book started coming out. And I got into those. And I don't know, there was stuff in those I would think, man, that could be Sasquatch. And it just made the whole subject creepier. So as time went on, it took me about 2.5 years to write the book because what I did, I would just notch out 12 hours a day every Sunday and write because I was busy and that's about all the time I had. So I got the book written. Funny thing, when I chose this area and I chose Talahena, I'd never been there. So I took Google Earth and I just plopped down in Talahena, went up and down the road, saw where everything was, and just used that to write the book. In fact, I didn't make my first trip up here until I was 8 months into writing the book. And I thought, you better go up there and look around and make sure it's, I wanted it to be as realistic as possible. And I remember the first time I looked at from Street View, I swung around and there's a restaurant in town called Pam's Hateful Hussy Diner. And I thought, oh man, I got to use that. So a lot of scenes in the first book are in Pam's Hateful Hussy Diner. And it was a trip up to see her that got me living up here, as a matter of fact. So I get the book done. I'm just about ready to send it to the publisher. And there was a main character in the book, and a little spoiler alert, she didn't make it through the whole book. And her name was Monica. And I didn't use any names of anybody I knew. And I'd never known a Monica in my life. And then just as I'm about to release the book out, here comes Monica walking into my life. And we start dating. And anyway, so, I didn't go to college, I got through high school, ran off to the Air Force. Monica had gone to UTEP, and that was something we had in common. My older brother was 10 years older, gotten a football scholarship there in the 60s. And I knew a little bit about El Paso because we would go up there. And plus, she was an Air Force brat, and she had a son that was in Iraq, and I had two in Iraq. And so we had a lot in common. But I remember our first date, I wanted to take her to Texarkana. We were living in Sulphur Springs, and the restaurants are better in Texarkana. I kind of want to impress her, take her to a nice place. So I'm taking her to Texarkana, and she says, "So you've written a book, what's it about?" And I'm thinking, man, it took 4 months to get a date with her. I'm not going to start talking about Bigfoot. So I wouldn't say anything. I was like, yeah, it's fiction. It's a novel. Well, what's it about? Well, there's these cops and stuff, and they have this stuff going on. Finally, I said, okay, it's a novel about Bigfoot. And she's a very spiritual person. I mean, even now she'll get up at 4 in the morning and she'll read the Torah and she reads the Bible and and she's got volumes of notes. I told her she's the one that should be getting things published, not me. But so I tell her this, and I'm expecting her to say, okay, take me home or laugh or something. And she just thought for a second. She said, if those things exist, I think they may be a form of Nephilim, a hybrid of Nephilim. And I'm like, what's Nephilim? Because I hadn't read the Bible like her. And she goes, have you read the Bible? And I'm like, well, no. And she goes, well, you should. And she goes, start in Genesis 6 when you do. And I was like, okay. So I looked at Genesis 6, didn't really get anything out of it. Then I went to Book of Enoch and things like that, where it gets fleshed out a little more. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And as it happened, it was funny because she planted a seed on that date. But the funny thing was, so she didn't reject me because I'd written a Bigfoot book. So we blew right through Texarkana and took her straight to Falk, Arkansas, where Legend of Poppy Creek is. And so we took the pictures and all their little stuff. And I did take her back to Texarkana and get her a nice meal. But yeah, I took her on a little Bigfoot sidetrack there. But anyway,
love it.
my sister, I would send her what I wrote every week. And the book was huge. It was over 400 pages because I found all this cool stuff, like government cover-ups and military involvement. And I'm like, man, I want to use all this. I'm going to make a book that tells this big, huge, dramatic story with all this stuff in it. So then I'm sending this stuff to my sister. And then when I'm just about finished with the book, she goes, this is so good, you're going to have to do a sequel. I'm like, whoa, that's 400 pages. I've used every Bigfoot trick I got. I can't make another book. I really can't. And then I started thinking about the Nephilim thing. I'm like, well, maybe I can hook that into the story. And so I did. And with it, I was able to bring UFOs. And you like history, Brandon. So in the second book, I get into a lot of early UFO history, Roswell, Kenneth Arnold sighting, Operation High Jump down in the Antarctic.
Oh boy!
And then I get into even more. I just finished the manuscript for Relics 3. It should be out next month.
Oh, wonderful!
Yeah, and I was able to get into that, and it made 2 more books out of it, so I got a trilogy out of it. And I've been very fortunate that I've got a lot of really nice fans, and they really invested in characters. Oh, did they invest in characters? I killed off a favorite once, and no more. Had a couple of people get all over me. But I was like, hey, I created them, I'll kill them, But then I thought, it's a good thing that people invest that much love in a character you wrote. That's a good thing. That's a positive. So, but funny thing too, speaking of Betsy, we met last year at a book signing, and our stories, we're covering the same subjects. We're going in different directions. I mean, but our books parallel each other. And it was so bad that I said, I'm not going to read any more of Betsy's books until I get done with the Relics series, because the last time I talked to her, she told me, yeah, my book's coming out and it's got runestones, it's got this and it's got that. And I was like, that's the book I can't even read her book because I didn't want to plagiarize or get an idea. So I'm glad now. Betsy, I can buy your other books if you're listening. So
she's listening, and she's also said Relics 3 equals take my money.
And she also said that she hasn't read very far into yours either for the exact same reason.
Yeah, well, I think her series is stretching on. I'm ending Relics with 3, but I'm taking the characters into a whole new I'm coming out with a whole new series in 2023 with
Oh,
those same characters. So,
fantastic.
Hey,
yeah.
Whitney,
Yes.
wouldn't it be cool if we saw like a crossover? Betsy and John?
I don't know.
They're-
I might make her mad. She's a hockey player, and I don't want to get hit with a stick. The funny thing, too, when we met, she was telling me how she was a hockey player, and I played rugby for 6 years. You
Oh,
know, and I
wow.
thought, we got a lot in common.
Yes, you
Violent
do.
sports.
So, not just Bigfoot, but also you said UFOs. So,
Right.
have you by any chance had a UFO encounter?
Yes, I have. And funny thing is, nothing weird ever happened to me till I married Monica. I blame it all on her. No, I don't know
Because you took
if
her
I
to
started paying
Arkansas.
more attention or if I opened myself up to these things. But funny thing, well, I'll tell you this real quick before I get on the UFOs. If you look in, I think it's now in the back of the second book, but there's a picture of me leaning against this sign, and it
Oh,
said
yeah.
Indian Highway, home of Bigfoot.
Yep.
Well, took that picture on New Year's Eve, 2016, and had no idea in 18 months I'd be living 500 feet from that sign. No,
That's
didn't have a
amazing.
clue. And how that all happened was we driven up here, and I gave Pam from Pam's Hateful Hussy Diner a free book and thanked her for letting me use her business in my writing. And we were coming back, and there's a little overhang about a mile above the little town here. And we stopped and we were looking, and we thought, man, wouldn't this be nice to live up here? And I thought, yeah, it would. Well, the company I work for just picked up all the maintenance and sales for copiers, printers, and faxes for the Choctaw Nation casinos.
Oh.
So all of a sudden, they needed a tech up here, and I just happened to be going down the hallway one day and past the president's office. He's talking to the service manager. He goes, "We got to get a tech in Oklahoma. We got to find one, get them trained." And I just kind of came to a dead stop, backed up, and said, "Hey, I'll move up there." And they said, "You will?" And I said, "Yeah, Choctaw Nation, that's what we're covering." They said, "Yeah." I said, "I know a place I want to live. It's right in the middle." And we just happened to see there was a house for sale up here. So it's weird. We ended up in Honubi. You know, after all this, to end up here was really strange. But
I would say that's definitely meant to be.
so the UFO thing, yes. And it took me a while to tell this story. And in fact, I reported another UFO sighting in MUFON last year, and the lady drugged this story out of me. This was in September 2017, and we bought, after we got married, we bought a big above ground pool, and I would come home from work and clean it. I remember it was a Friday, and I was cleaning the pool and put chemicals in it, and it was just getting dusk. So Monica came out to tell me something, so I swam over to where she was, and I just had my arms over, you know, I'm singing, and I'm looking up at her while she's talking to me, and I see the star behind her head, and it looks like it's wiggling. You know, it was like, I just thought it was your normal first story I see tonight, and I think, well, I got chemicals in my eyes, so I rub my eyes and I look back at it, and now it's like doing this triangle pattern, and I'm yelling, "Monica, Monica, look, 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 look!" You know, she didn't know what I was talking about, but by the time she turned around and saw it, she got her eyes on it, and the thing zipped off to the west. And I watched it zip off to the west. She watched it zip off to the west. But here's the weird part. So I bring my eyes back to where I'd seen it at first. And it's going to sound really stupid, but I see this thing with wings. It looks like a man with wings. And he had to be 5,000 feet in the air, but it was like I could see the details. Now, I didn't get any sense of it being angelic or anything like that. It looked more like some kind of superhero or cartoon character or something. And I'm looking at it, and Monica didn't see it, and I'm watching it, and it's going the same way, but slower. And then it just kind of dissolved. And I didn't even want to tell Monica I'd seen that, even though we both just seen the UFO. So that was pretty creepy, and I wouldn't talk about it for a while. And I've always wondered what that was. And then last August, we were having a meteor shower. So I was out watching meteors, and this big oval orange football thing goes whizzing by the south. And it wasn't coming down like a meteor, and it wasn't leaving a trail. It just looked like a glowing orange football. and it looked like it was moving it with intent. It was heading south toward Broken Bow. And I spent a lot of time looking at the sky, spent a lot of time looking at airplanes, and no, this wasn't an airplane. So I decided to call MUFON and report that. And so the real nice lady called me back, and they did a little report, and she came back. Well, there was an Airbus 335 that you could have seen from where you are, at this time. Was it that? And I'm like, no, I'm very aware of what aircraft look like at night, and this wasn't that. And she goes, well, we didn't get any radar reports of anything. And I thought maybe it might have been a meteor, but it would have had to come down, because I think the thing was probably 13,000 feet at the most on how it went over the ridge of the mountains. We sit in a little valley here in Honubi in the middle of the Kiamichi Mountains. So half mile this way, there's mountains. Half mile this way, there's mountains. And, to get out of here, you got to go through the mountains. So I had no idea what it was. It fascinated me, and I thought, well, I'm calling that in. And while I was telling that, she happened to dig out the other UFO side, and she goes, well, have you ever seen any beings? I'm like, oh, you asked that, please don't. So I went ahead and told her, and I thought, she's gonna think, well, this guy's a kook, and all she said was, no, we get a lot of reports like that. And I was like, really? And she goes, yeah, we get a lot of entity reports. I said, flying entities? And she goes, yeah. I was like, okay. So, and then yeah. Hey, it's good. Yeah, that's exactly. Anything like that, you'd be amazed. I'll be sitting around. So I could be in a restaurant. I'll hear somebody say something. Ooh, I can use that in a book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Moving around a little. But,
absolutely.
And then we got here, and I'd gone on a couple of Bigfoot hunts, and really never saw anything. Had some creepy stuff happen in Arkansas, but I'm not sure what that was. But that place was scary. And then I went a couple times to Brown Springs, Oklahoma, and it's supposedly so scary you don't want to be there in the daytime. Well, the first time I went, I took my second oldest son and my youngest son. Now I had two of my sons serve in Iraq, and this kind of went back. My oldest son came back really hard pressed with PTSD, and I lost him in 2019. And my second youngest son, or oldest son, Thomas, he lost both legs over in Iraq. So I had him in the truck, and my youngest son, Trevor. And so when we parked down in there, and I heard how scary it was, his wheelchair ain't going to run around down there. And I said, look, we're going to walk down the river, walk right back. I don't want you sitting here alone. And he just bought a Judge pistol the day before, just got it. He's like, no, man, don't take all the time you want it. Give me a chance to use it. I'm like, okay, man, we hear you shooting, we'll come running. But never saw anything down there. And then again, I made another trip to Arkansas, and it was weird again, but it was spooky. That place, I don't know, that place gives me the creeps. And then after a second trip to Brown Springs, it was the first weekend in August in 2018, and we'd been here about 3 months. So I came back, and all I got on that trip was chiggers and tick bites, and I was miserable. Yeah. So I told Monica, I said, those things were here. I think they're gone, because I never get a creepy feeling here. How some places you go and you just kind of I don't get that here. And I mean, it's pitch black out there at night. The only thing that worries me is there are big cats up here, like mountain lions and stuff. People got them. And that's what I'm scared of, because you wouldn't know one's sitting right next to you, if you walk by one in the dark. But, so anyway, I told her I don't think they're here. I don't think they're in Brown Springs. And it was 2 nights. It was August 7th, I believe, 2018. And if you guys remember 2018, if you're a sky watcher, Mars was real prominent that year.
Yes.
And so we own 5 acres. 4 acres is kind of on one side of the road. We live on a little dirt road. On the other side, we got another acre to the south of us. And across from it is a Choctaw church. And they keep the churchyard mowed down and cleaned up. And they got a couple of the vapor lights in the back, booger lights, some people call them. And so I'm looking up at Mars, and I got my dog Opie with me. And that's another funny thing. We got Opie before we moved down here. Named him Opie because it was a character on the Sons of Anarchy I liked.
Oh
Come to
yeah.
find out, we get here, Opie's a Choctaw name for dog. So it's like it's all this weird stuff,
Oh,
happening as we come here.
I love it.
So I walk out and I walked around Monica's car and I tripped the motion sensor, and the carport lights behind me came up, and I was looking up at Mars, and my eyes just saw something move, and I looked down, and this thing was running from my left to my right, south of me. It was perfectly backlit with those vapor lights, and as soon as I saw it, I knew what it was because it didn't have that big bulky look like they report in the Pacific Northwest or like the Patty film.
Right.
This was kind of thin, and I wouldn't say lanky. You could see it was muscular, but it wasn't, it wasn't barrel chested or anything like that. It looked like it looked like an athlete. It really did. But you could see hair hanging off it. And the weirdest thing, when it ran, and people will still give me grief about this, but it's what I saw. It didn't pump its arms. Its arms were set in like a surfer's stance. And I watched it for roughly 100 yards. And it never pumped its arms once until it leaped. And it leaped over a pile of old rocks and logs. And that was the only time I saw one pump of the arms, and it was out of my sight. So I go running into the house and find Monica. I'm like, Monica, I just saw a Sasquatch. And she looked real close to my eyes and goes, "Oh, John." And then 3 months later, she sees one in the same exact spot, nearly, only going the other direction. It was walking. But as luck would have it, she had 2 other people with her, and they saw it too. So she would,
okay.
because I remember telling her, it's like, man, I wish I hadn't seen it because I want to tell people, but then everybody starts looking at you. And already at work, because I wrote a Sasquatch novel, I was Bigfoot Bob all of a sudden, I started getting funny emails or, hey, I need this part. I thought you had one. No, I don't have one. What, Bigfoot, take it? That's the kind of stuff you start getting. I don't know how many times I say it's a novel, people. Chill out. But
that's all.
But anyway, so that was pretty weird. And then we hear things on the mountains from time to time. Now, the funny thing about here is a lot of people think it's all garbage. They don't believe in it. People have been here for years. And then there's people that swear up and down they've seen them. They know they're there, and they can even give you a little information. One funny story, met this older couple here. I'll be 64 Saturday, and I'm calling other people older, but they're older than me. So, and the guy, he's lived here most of his life. And when he was a young boy, I think they had a pretty large family, a lot of kids. Well, his father just ran off one day. And so he was the oldest son, and all of a sudden he had all these responsibilities put on him. Well, they were out of food. His mom told him, go up the mountain and get a deer or a hog, get something. And he said he had one of those things follow him up the mountain and down the mountain. And they went hungry that day because he wouldn't go back up. And I'd get tickled because his wife would always say, he never got to finish the story. His wife would always interrupt, "Oh, I've lived here all my life. There ain't no Bigfoot in them woods." And she'd always say that. And then the last time I was trying to get him to tell the story, she started saying that. I was about to interrupt her and ask her, "Hey, let me hear his story." And she goes, "But you know what? We saw a flying saucer on the way to Talahina." And I started laughing. I thought, okay, it's okay for you to see a flying saucer, but not for him to see Bigfoot. It's just amazing, how people's minds work. But we have good friends up here that think you're nuts if you've seen one or say anything about it. And we have good friends that, yeah, I've seen them, they'll tell you. So.
Well, you can tell he's an author. He's got plenty of stories.
There you go.
I love it.
So,
well, it's funny. All that happened in like just this combined space. And like I said, I don't know if I was paying more attention or what, because I went 62 years with nothing happening, and all of a sudden, bang, 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 and those things happen within the space of 3 years. So,
Well, and they always say that stuff too. Is if it's a whole closed-minded theory. You're not going to see the stuff if you're not open to looking for it. But once you started doing the research and going into that and learning about all the different backlogs and backstories and everything like that, it opens your mind to it. So you're going to be more able to see things around you because you're subconsciously know what to look for. I guess,
Right.
in a way. But let's talk a little bit more about your most recent book, Relics 2. So that's the one where Sam and Addison have a whole bunch of new stuff going on in 2016.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, as it starts out, I won't say how book one ended, in case people want to buy it. I don't want to spoil it. But book one did end. I did some editing after I met Monica. And book one did leave an opening for book two because Addison was able to communicate with his Sasquatch using ancient Hebrew. Now, they didn't talk, they didn't carry on a conversation, but when he spoke it, the creature knew what it was and responded to what he said. And that's as much as I'll say about it. So, yeah, the second book starts out. There's a return of Sasquatch activity here. Starts out with I made friends. My first book signing was in Arkansas at this little town, and so I opened a book there with these two kids that see a Sasquatch and then they disappear, and the truck they're in's turned upside down, and I bring back characters, peripheral characters, I guess you would call it, and they get involved, law enforcement types from Arkansas and Oklahoma, and then Bigfoot stuff starts happening in Honubby, and it gets out to Addison and Sam, and then Addison, the father, actually encounters a man in black on his property, and he's trying to talk to the guy, and the guy's just smiling at him, and he's backing up, and then he's gone. Well, Addison goes over to where the guy had been and finds these two kids that were missing. I might be saying too much, but anyway, one thing leads to another. One thing leads to another, and they figure out that now there is natural Sasquatch in my book, but they figure out that these things they had fought 4 years ago were hybrids, and that there's a fallen angel, Nergal, who's interested in southeast Oklahoma, and you won't find out what he's up to or why he's down here until book 3. But I also introduce another character for the UFO part. His name's Joshua Neshoba, and I roll back to 1947 on him. He starts out, he's a young man. He when Pearl Harbor happens, he's got an uncle that was serving at Hickam Field in Hawaii, and he gets killed during the Pearl Harbor attack. So Josh is at a movie theater in Tallahena watching a movie about the Flying Tigers, and he wanted to go in the Army Air Corps like his uncle had been, but they showed and it's one of the things I had to go find out when this newsreel was actually released, but they showed the John Ford New Year from the Battle of Midway, and it was in color, and he sees these blue Navy planes, and he sees the Japanese flags on the sides of the plane for the kills they had, and he's like, I want to be a Navy pilot. Well, by the time he gets through school, into the Navy, through his training, and becomes a pilot, the war is ended. And so he's involved in Operation High Jump in Antarctica in 1947. And
wow.
He gets involved with, and that was the one where Bird supposedly disappeared for a while, and we lost some people, and they had a task force down there, and they turned it around and brought it out. So kind of dramatized that, and Josh gets into a dogfight with some UFOs down off Antarctica. And then because of his experiences, he gets assigned to naval intelligence, and he goes and interviews Kenneth Arnold, the first guy, the guy whose story prompted the term flying saucer in 1947. And he also ends up at Roswell right after that thing happens.
Wow.
And then he goes, they pull him out because the Air Force is forming in 1947, and they handed all the UFO investigations over to the Air Force. Since he's a naval aviator, he goes back to his career as a flyer. And then in 1968 in the book, and this was another thing that happened, there was an Australian cruiser off Tiger Island off the coast of Vietnam, and it reported UFO activity. And actually, it was Air Force jets were scrambled to come to their aid, and somehow they say it was a Sparrow missile from one of the F-4s that hit the ship and killed a couple Australian sailors. Now I took that story and I added Josh in a flight from his carrier of F-4s, and I just altered, the Air Force planes are there. Of course, I'm not gonna rob my own branch of the service. So, but Josh and his Navy F-4s show up, and it gets a little more involved in the actual story. And also that same night, there was 2 river patrol boats, almost straight, completely to the west of Tiger Island inland, and 2 Navy patrol boats were ambushed by what they called North Vietnamese helicopters. And North Vietnamese helicopter was kind of a code word for UFO because North Vietnamese didn't have helicopters.
Right. Okay.
So these things were pulling vertical maneuvers and hovering, and they attacked these 2 river boats. And originally, the Air Force squadron, the Air Force flight that ended up at the Hobart, was dispatched to go help those sailors that were inbound, in country on that river. And they actually lost one of those boats that night. And the thing of it, what's kind of weird about both stories is they fired on the UFO, and the damage they took, it was almost like their own ammo came back and hit them, because it was 50 cal rounds, 20 millimeter rounds, stuff like that. It was American ordnance that did the damage to the boat, and the boats weren't shooting at each other. And then it was American ordnance that did the damage to the Hobart. So I thought that was kind of weird. But anyway, it gets more into the cover up there. Now I go at the UFOs a different way. I make them, they're interdimensional in my books. In this set,
I was gonna say,
I'm not going the space route. I'm kind of going the biblical route, or they're interdimensional, and the technology isn't alien, it's angelic. And people say, well, it's fallen angels. I said, no, angelic technology is angelic technology. If the fallen use it, it's the same technology, that was created before they fell. So, and I'm using a lot of, especially coming into 3, there's portals. And in 3, I'm going, you familiar with Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, the UFO there in 1965?
Yeah, I think I've heard of that.
Well, I tied into that using it. Have you ever heard of the Glock, the bell, the German bell? I tie that in, and I go back to Antarctica and just kind of pick everything up from where it left. And I just bring the whole story to a climax at the end of book 3. So, but if you like history, I've added as much history as I possibly can.
I would say so. That's great.
That's a lot of ground to cover in a book.
Yeah. Well, they're big books, and there's 3 of them. But the guy that was talking about, he marveled that I was able to tie the Bigfoot and UFO thing together. And I told him, well, you're going to flip out when you read book 3. So,
oh boy.
But I tell you, book 3,
we all will.
Book 3, I told myself no more big books and no more this big, because I don't think I've got any sleep in July and August. It wore me out, but it's done. We're working on final edits. They're going to send it off to Empire to publish it in a few days. So.
Yay!
Man, we timed that perfectly.
Yeah, funny enough.
And also, I wrote my publisher. She's really, I don't know. We met by accident on a Nephilim thread in Facebook, and we were having a discussion, and it kind of got funny because I don't know if we were disagreeing or something. She goes, well, have you read my book? And I thought she was being snotty. And I'm like, oh, no, but have you read mine? And she goes, oh, you're an author? I said, well, kind of. But anyway, we ended up becoming friends. And she said, I'm not going to sell you on this. I want you to look at our company and see if you think it would benefit you. And I looked and I thought, man, this is much better than the deal I had. So I said, well, I want to do my second book with them. And, I was just, when I met her, I was about 3 or 4 days away from just canning Relics 2. I mean, we had moved to Oklahoma. I was driving even more every day. I'd lost my sister. I'd lost my son. I even lost the manuscript when we moved. And so I was having to go all the way back to the beginning. And so I just didn't think I had it in me. But then I thought, well, looking at that, no, I want to try. I want to get Relics 2 done. So I decided to do it. And as I started writing it again, I thought, you know what? This is going to be different from a whole different look from what I had with the original Relics, A Myth You Don't Believe, a Reality You Won't Survive. So I said, hey, can we do a second edition of Relics? Well, of course, that's a chance to make. Oh yeah, we'll be glad to do it. So I went ahead and did the second edition, which, as you said, released in October of last year, and it was fortuitous because then Relics 2 came out in December 27th. So the books kind of came out back to back, and that was another reason I thought, well, I'm gonna hurry up and get this third one done. But between the second one and third one, I wrote a short youth novel called, and it's going to be a series. It's called Shadow Chasers, and the first edition is Wild Man of Rock Creek, and it's another Bigfoot story, but it's in Tallahena, but it's set just before all the stuff kicked off in the original Relics. So I went back just a little bit for the other one and did this book, and then I'm going to rest another week or so, and then I'm going to knock out another youth novel, the second in that series, and it's going to be Haunted Sky. And then I'm going to get to work on my next series is going to be Enigma Team, and going to get started on Enigma Team.
Oh,
got
boy.
A lot going on there, my friend.
Yeah, well, I retired.
I can wait.
Yeah, good thing you retired.
I retired and went to work.
That is so. Oh my God. Woo!
So, John, where's the best place for us to find your books? Because I guarantee you the people listening to this are going to be like, yeah, I need this. I mean, I'm sitting here in my mind already mentally thinking about how I'm going to fit some space into my paranormal bookcase.
Well, I'm on Amazon, but then people got to remember how to spell my last name and this and that. You can go to www.relics with an S book singular.com, and you can find all 3 current books that are out. There's a link for if you want Kindle, if you want hardback, if you want paperback, right there. So it's www.relicsbook.com.
Got it.
Perfect.
Nice.
So then
And
that way,
people can find you on the socials and everything.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. Actually, on that very same website, there's a link that says contact. You can email me from there. Yeah, I'm not hard to find.
Yay!
Good. Well, we'll make sure to put links to all that stuff in the show notes tonight, so that way we can make sure that anybody that wants to talk to you can find you. Anybody that wants to buy your stuff can buy it.
Well, I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yep. You're easier to find than Sasquatch.
I got to tell you, just my experience and from a few people I've talked that have seen them, I don't think you're going to find one if you go looking for it. You just got to have dumb luck and be in the right places, right? I swear, if I'm looking for something, nothing ever happens. I never see anything. But if I go outside to look at Mars, bang, all of a sudden, 2 days after I make the declaration, they're not here. One runs by and goes, oh, yeah. Funny thing, too, what was kind of weird was since we were new here, I hadn't gone down in that part of the property because it was high grass and I get enough ticks and chiggers, I don't invite them. But after October, I start getting out in the trees and the woods and the forest. But when it's green in the summer, I kind of shy away. So I went down there the next day, and I remember I saw it run under a certain branch, and the branch was maybe 6 inches above its head. And Monica's fairly tall; she's 5'9". And I was thinking this thing was about 6 foot. So I had Monica stand there, and I went back to where I was like, "Oh my God, it was a lot taller than her." And so it was big. It was pushing 7 foot at least, maybe a little over. But I figured out what it jumped over, and it landed right in the middle of that little Choctaw cemetery there. And I thought that was weird. And I got a neighbor who lives just across and a little down from me, and I told him about it. And he's Choctaw and lived here most of his life. He spent some time in Florida. He said he's seen them in the same place. He goes, "Man, I'll see him occasionally run down that game trail behind his house." So when I told him, he goes, "Yeah, that's their path. They'll go through there." I go, "Oh, neat." But I haven't seen one since.
There you go.
That's crazy. Well, John, my friend, this has been a wild ride tonight.
What a great night. Thank you so much,
Thank
John.
you for having me. I really appreciate it. And Betsy, thank you for planting that seed for me. I absolutely enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Yeah, and we also have to give shout outs back to our chat. Kat Armstrong is on too, and Betsy also wished you a happy birthday.
Oh, tell her thank you. Thank you, Betsy. I guess I can tell her.
Yeah.
I can't see the text buffer, so I think she can't see me or hear me. I'm invisible to
her. That's us.
Well, I'm at your mercy, so I don't know what's getting out. Yeah.
Excuse me. Well, that definitely slipped out. I've been so careful.
You're doing so good.
I know.
That's right.
The cough slipped out. I've been doing so good, muting myself when I've been blowing my nose.
That's all right. You went for over an hour. That's all we can ask for, right?
I did it.
Well,
for you
again.
guys.
It was my pleasure.
Again for not coughing. All right. Well, thanks again to John for being our guest tonight and telling us all about these amazing books. People go buy these books. You want
to
check out
Relics.
Yes. And thanks again for everyone for tuning in.
And if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please remember to take a second to rate us 5 stars. Yes. 5 stars, or leave us a review. It helps us to get the word out about the show. And we also want your feedback to help make the show better.
That's right, Whitney. And if you're an Android listener, you can follow us on Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or just simply say, "Alexa, play the Para Unity podcast," so you never miss an episode. Remember, if you like the show, tell a friend. Or if you just want to be a guest on our show, or simply want more Para Unity, please join us on our Facebook or Instagram pages. Also, if you do want to help support the show, please stop by our website and buy us a coffee. Every little bit helps, because I know I love me some coffee.
Not as much as I do, especially now that we're in the season of pumpkin spice.
Yes, and
Don't
pumpkin
judge.
beer.
You're right, pumpkin beer. There you go.
Woo! Para Unity
Yay.
After Dark. All right. Well, my name is Brandon.
And I'm Whitney, and you have been listening to the best place to bring our paranormal family a little closer together, the Para Unity podcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.